Nobody would believe me if I told them this story, and I have made peace with that fact a long time ago. At 82 years old, I have lived through enough to know that the world holds mysteries that most people will never accept, mysteries that they would rather dismiss than try to understand. But what happened on my land, what has been happening for the past 3 years, is something I can no longer keep entirely to myself. I need to say it out loud, even if it is just to prove to myself that it is real, that I have not lost my mind in my old age out here in the wilderness of northern Minnesota. My name is Evelyn Marsh, and I have been living on this property for nearly 55 years. My husband Robert and I bought these 280 acres back when we were young and foolish and in love with the idea of building something from nothing. We came from the city, from Minneapolis, and everyone told us we were crazy for wanting to move so far into the backcountry. The nearest town is over 35 miles away, and the closest neighbor lives about 6 miles down a gravel road that becomes nearly impassable when the winter snows come. But Robert and I, we wanted the isolation. We wanted the peace. We wanted to raise our children surrounded by nature instead of concrete. And that is exactly what we did. Robert passed away 16 years ago, taken by a heart attack that came without warning on a cold February morning. One moment, he was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking his coffee and reading the newspaper, and the next moment he was gone. Just like that. 53 years of marriage, 3 children, a lifetime of memories, and it all ended in the span of a few heartbeats. I thought I would die too, honestly. I thought the grief would swallow me whole, and I would just fade away into nothing. But I did not fade. I stayed. I kept tending to the animals, kept maintaining the property, kept living even when I was not sure I wanted to anymore. My daughter calls me from Texas every week, begging me to come live with her and her husband and their 2 boys. My son sends me brochures for retirement communities in Florida, places where old ladies like me can play bingo and do water aerobics and wait to die in the sunshine. My youngest, my other daughter, she understands. She lives up in Alaska now, married to a fishing boat captain, and she knows what it means to love a piece of land so much that you cannot imagine existing anywhere else. She's the only one who does not try to convince me to leave. This farm is not just where I live, it is who I am. Every fence post, every board in the barn, every tree in the apple orchard that Robert and I planted during our first spring here, it all holds a piece of my soul. I know this land the way I know my own body. I know which parts of the creek freeze first in winter and which meadow the deer prefer for grazing in the early morning hours. I know the sound the wind makes when it comes from the east versus when it comes from the north. I can smell rain coming a full day before it arrives. This place has been my entire world for more than half a century, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about it. But 3 years ago, I learned that I was wrong. 3 years ago, something came to my farm that I had never encountered before, something that should not exist according to everything science and reason tell us about the world. And that something changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. It started on a Wednesday evening in late autumn. The leaves had already turned and fallen, carpeting the ground in shades of orange and gold and brown. The air had that crisp bite to it that signals winter is coming, and I had spent most of the day preparing the animals for the cold months ahead. I keep goats, mostly, about a dozen of them, along with a flock of chickens, a few ducks, and until 3 years ago, I had a small herd of sheep as well. That evening, I was in the kitchen making myself a simple dinner of soup and bread when I heard the goats screaming. Now, goats are noisy animals by nature. They bleat and complain about everything, and I have learned over the years to distinguish between their normal vocalizations and sounds of genuine distress. What I heard that evening was pure terror. It was a sound I had never heard my goats make before, a sound that made my blood run cold. I grabbed my rifle from beside the door and ran outside as fast as my old legs would carry me. The goat pen is about 100 yards from the house, past the chicken coop and the old storage shed. By the time I got there, the screaming had stopped. Everything was silent except for my own ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart in my ears. I shone my flashlight around the pen, and what I saw made me take a step backward in pure shock. The fence had been torn apart, not cut, not broken at a weak point, but physically torn open like something had grabbed the wire mesh with its bare hands and ripped it like paper. 2 of my goats were gone, just gone. No blood, no bodies, no trail that I could see in the darkness. Just a massive hole in my fence and 2 missing animals. I searched the perimeter with my flashlight, my hands shaking so badly that the beam was bouncing everywhere. That is when I found the footprints. They were in a patch of soft mud near the water trough, and when I shone my light on them, I felt my legs go weak. They were enormous, easily 18 inches long and maybe 7 or 8 inches wide. They looked almost human, with 5 distinct toes, but they were far too large and far too deep to have been made by any person. Whatever had left these prints was heavy, incredibly heavy, and it walked on 2 feet. I stood there in the darkness, staring at those impossible footprints, and I knew that I was not dealing with a bear or a wolf or any other predator I had encountered in my decades of living in these woods. I was dealing with something else entirely, something that my rational mind refused to accept, but that the evidence in front of me made undeniable. I went back to the house and locked every door and window. I sat in my chair with my rifle across my lap, watching the darkness through the window, listening to every sound the night made. Every creak of the old house settling made me jump. Every gust of wind through the trees sounded like footsteps. I did not sleep at all that night. When dawn finally came and painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, I went back out to examine the damage in the light of day. It was even worse than I had thought. The fence posts had been yanked out of the ground like they were toothpicks. The wire mesh was twisted and mangled beyond repair, and those footprints were everywhere, circling the goat pen in a pattern that suggested whatever had made them had been walking around and around, studying the enclosure before deciding to tear into it. I spent the next several days reinforcing the goat pen. I drove new posts 3 feet deep into the ground. I used the heaviest gauge wire I could find at the hardware store in town. I even strung up some old cowbells along the perimeter, thinking that if something tried to get in again, at least the noise would alert me. I worked from sunrise to sunset, my arthritic hands aching with every swing of the hammer, my back screaming in protest every time I bent over to secure another section of fence. But I was determined. Those goats depended on me, and I was not going to let them down. When I finally finished, I stood back and surveyed my work with a sense of grim satisfaction. Let whatever it was try to get through that. It got through anyway. Less than a week later, I woke to that same terrible sound, that chorus of terrified screaming from the goat pen. This time, when I ran outside, I caught a glimpse of something moving at the edge of the tree line. It was massive, easily 7 or 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur that was almost black in the moonlight. It was running on 2 legs, but leaning forward, arms swinging, moving with a speed and power that seemed impossible for something so large. In its arms, it carried one of my goats like the animal weighed nothing at all. The goat was still struggling, still screaming, but the creature held it effortlessly as it disappeared into the forest. I stood there frozen, watching it vanish into the darkness. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely hold my rifle. My heart was pounding so hard that I could feel it in my temples. I had seen it. I had actually seen it. Not clearly, not well enough to make out any details, but I had seen something that should not exist. Something out of legend, out of campfire stories and grainy photographs that people dismiss as hoaxes. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it. the creature that I had heard about my entire life but never believed in for a single moment. It was real, and it was hunting on my land. The next few weeks were some of the most terrifying of my entire life. I started sleeping with my rifle beside my bed instead of by the door. I installed motion sensor lights around the barn and the animal pens, hoping that the sudden illumination might scare the creature away. I even called my daughter in Texas and almost told her what was happening, but I stopped myself at the last moment. What would I even say? That a Bigfoot was killing my animals. She would have had me committed to a nursing home before I could hang up the phone. So I kept quiet, and I kept watching, and I kept losing animals. Another goat disappeared, then 2 of my sheep, then 3 chickens from the coop. The door ripped off its hinges like it was made of cardboard instead of solid oak. I started keeping a tally in a little notebook, recording every loss, every bit of damage, every detail I could remember about each incident. I was documenting evidence that no one would ever believe, but I needed to do it anyway. I needed to prove to myself that I was not going crazy. The smell was the thing that bothered me the most. Every time the creature came close to my property, it left behind this distinctive odor that I can only describe as a mixture of wet animal, rotting vegetation, and something else, something wild and primal that triggered a deep fear response in my brain. It was the smell of a predator, a top-of-the-food-chain predator that had never learned to fear humans because it had never needed to. The smell would linger for days after each attack, clinging to the fence posts and the grass and the air itself, a constant reminder that I was not alone on my property anymore. I started staying up at night, sitting in the darkness by my window with the lights off, watching the tree line for any sign of movement. Most nights, nothing happened. The creature seemed to come and go on its own schedule, appearing when I least expected it and staying away when I was most vigilant. But on the nights when it did come, I would see that massive shape moving through the shadows, watch it approach my animal pens with a deliberate, almost casual stride. It was not afraid of me. It knew I was there, watching, and it did not care. That was perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. It knew I was there, and it was not afraid. I lost count of how many animals I lost in those first few months. At least a dozen goats, all of my sheep, countless chickens. The financial loss was devastating, but the emotional toll was even worse. These were not just livestock to me. They were animals I had raised from birth, animals I had named and cared for and loved in my own way. Watching them disappear one by one, taken by something I could not stop and could not fight, was like watching pieces of my life being ripped away. I started researching. I know that sounds funny. An 80-year-old woman sitting at her computer looking up information about Bigfoot. But I needed to understand what I was dealing with. I learned that sightings had been reported in Minnesota for decades, concentrated mostly in the northern part of the state, where the forests were thickest and the human population was sparse. I learned that the creatures were supposed to be intelligent, possibly as intelligent as humans, and that most researchers believed they were primarily vegetarian, but would eat meat when it was available. I learned that they were nocturnal, territorial, and deeply reclusive, avoiding human contact whenever possible. None of this information made me feel any better, but at least it helped me understand that I was not alone in my experience. Other people had seen these creatures, other people had dealt with them, other people had survived. It was around the 6th month that everything changed. I had reached a point of exhaustion and despair where I was seriously considering selling the farm and moving to Texas to live with my daughter. I could not keep doing this. I could not keep losing animals and living in fear and sleeping with one eye open every night. I was too old for this kind of stress, and my body was starting to show the strain. I had lost weight. My hands shook constantly. I had developed a permanent knot of tension in my shoulders that no amount of hot baths or pain medication could loosen. I was falling apart, and I knew it. One evening, I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset and thinking about everything I would have to do to prepare the property for sale. It was a beautiful evening, the sky painted in shades of orange and purple, the air cool and crisp with the first hints of approaching winter. I had a cup of tea in my hands and a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, and for just a moment I let myself forget about the creature and the fear and the loss. I let myself just exist in that beautiful moment. That is when I saw it. Not lurking at the edge of the tree line, not skulking in the shadows, but standing right there at the edge of my yard, maybe 50 feet away. It was watching me. The creature was just standing there, completely still, watching me with eyes that reflected the fading light. It was enormous, easily 8 feet tall, covered in shaggy, dark brown fur that was almost black in the dim light. Its arms hung past its knees, ending in hands that looked almost human, but with thick, powerful fingers. Its face was a combination of ape and human, with a broad nose, a pronounced brow ridge, and a mouth that was set in a neutral expression that I could not read at all. I should have been terrified. I should have grabbed my rifle and run inside and locked the door. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the resignation of knowing that I could not fight this creature, could not stop it, could not do anything except endure whatever it wanted to do. Or maybe it was something in the way it was looking at me, something in those intelligent eyes that seemed more curious than threatening. Whatever the reason, I did not run. I did not scream. I just sat there on my porch, holding my cup of tea, and looked back at the creature that had been terrorizing my farm for months. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a minute or two. Neither of us moved. Neither of us made a sound. It was like we were taking each other's measure, trying to understand what the other was thinking, what the other wanted. And then, slowly, the creature raised one massive hand and made a gesture that I recognized. It patted its stomach, then pointed toward my property, then patted its stomach again. It was hungry. The creature was telling me that it was hungry. I do not know what possessed me to do what I did next. Maybe it was the isolation talking. Maybe it was the grief of losing Robert, the loneliness of living out here by myself for so many years. Maybe I had finally lost my mind, and this was just the latest symptom of my descent into madness. But I stood up from my chair, walked into the house, and came back out with a basket filled with food. I had some leftover roast chicken from dinner, a loaf of fresh bread I had baked that morning, a few apples from the orchard, and a jar of honey that I had gotten from a beekeeper in town. I walked to the edge of my porch, set the basket down on the steps, and then backed away slowly. The creature watched me the entire time, its head tilting slightly to one side, like a dog trying to understand a new command. When I was back in my chair, it moved forward cautiously, approaching the basket with obvious suspicion. It sniffed the air, circled the basket, sniffed again. Then slowly, it reached down and picked up one of the apples. It examined the fruit carefully, turning it over in its massive hand, and then it bit into it. I watched the creature's face change as it tasted the apple, saw what I can only describe as pleasure flash across those strange features. It finished the apple in 3 bites, core and all, and then reached for another one. It ate everything in the basket. Every piece of chicken, every slice of bread, every apple, even the honey, licking the jar clean with a tongue that was surprisingly pink and human-looking. When it was done, it set the empty basket back on my porch steps, looked at me one more time, and then turned and walked back toward the forest. It did not run. It did not look back. It just walked away with that same deliberate, powerful stride that I had seen so many times before. I sat on my porch long after the creature had disappeared into the trees. The sun had fully set by then, and the stars were coming out one by one in the darkening sky. I was shaking, but not from fear. I was shaking from the sheer impossibility of what had just happened. I had fed a Bigfoot. I had actually fed a Bigfoot, and it had not attacked me, had not threatened me, had not done anything except eat my food and leave peacefully. That night, for the first time in months, nothing happened. No attacks on my animal pens, no terrifying sounds in the darkness, no massive footprints appearing in my yard overnight. The creature stayed away, and my remaining animals stayed safe. I started leaving food out regularly after that. Every few nights I would put together a basket and leave it on my porch steps before sunset. Fruits, vegetables, bread, meat, whatever I had on hand. Sometimes I would add special things, like a jar of jam or some fresh honey or a piece of venison from the deer I had shot in hunting season. And every time, without fail, the creature would come and take the basket, eat everything inside and leave peacefully. It never attacked my animals again, not once. The reign of terror that had been destroying my farm simply stopped, as if someone had flipped a switch. Over the weeks and months that followed, the creature and I developed something that I can only describe as a relationship. It is a strange word to use for the connection between an elderly woman and a creature that is not supposed to exist, but I do not know what other word fits. We had an understanding, a mutual acknowledgement that we shared this land and that we could coexist peacefully if we were both willing to make accommodations. I started varying the contents of the baskets based on what I observed the creature liked best. It loved apples, especially the ones from the old tree behind my barn that produced fruit with a particular sweetness that the other trees did not match. It loved honey, would practically lick the jar clean and then hold it up to the moonlight to make sure it had gotten every last drop. It was less enthusiastic about vegetables, often leaving the carrots and celery behind while devouring everything else. It seemed to particularly enjoy bread, would break off pieces and chew them slowly, savoring the taste like someone appreciating a gourmet meal. As the months passed, I started moving the food basket closer to the tree line, and the creature started coming earlier and staying longer. Eventually, we reached a point where I could sit on my porch and watch it eat, and it did not seem to mind my presence at all. It would look up at me occasionally, those intelligent eyes meeting mine across the distance, and sometimes I could swear I saw recognition there, an acknowledgement that I was not just some background feature of the landscape, but a specific individual that it knew and remembered. The creature had what I came to think of as expressions, subtle changes in its face and posture that conveyed its mood. When it was content, which seemed to be most of the time now, it would move slowly and deliberately, taking its time with each item in the basket, sometimes pausing to look around at the stars or listen to the sounds of the night. When it was nervous or agitated, which happened occasionally, if there were unexpected noises or if it sensed something in the forest that I could not detect, it would grab the basket and disappear immediately into the trees without looking back. And when it was playful, which was rare but did happen, it would do things that seemed designed specifically to amuse itself or perhaps to amuse me. Once, I left out a basket that included a small rubber ball that I had found in my storage shed, left over from when my grandchildren used to visit and play in the yard. I had tossed it in on a whim, not really expecting anything to come of it. But when the creature found the ball, it examined it with obvious curiosity, squeezing it between its fingers and watching it spring back into shape. Then it threw the ball straight up into the air and caught it. It did this several times, throwing it higher and higher each time, catching it effortlessly with those huge hands. And then it looked at me, sitting there on my porch watching, and I could swear it was smiling, a creature that was not supposed to exist, playing catch with a rubber ball and smiling at an old woman on her porch. If I did not have my own eyes to confirm it, I would never believe such a thing was possible. The creature developed a sense of my schedule, of my habits and routines. It knew which nights I was likely to put out food and which nights I was not. It knew that I usually sat on my porch for about an hour after sunset, sipping tea and watching the stars come out. It knew that I went to bed early and woke up early, and it seemed to time its visits accordingly. Sometimes I would see it at the edge of the tree line in the early morning, just before dawn. as if it was checking to make sure I was awake and everything was okay. I started talking to it. I know that sounds crazy, an old woman talking to a creature that probably does not understand a word of what she is saying. But the loneliness out here can be overwhelming sometimes, and having another presence, even a non-human one, was a comfort that I had not expected. I would sit on my porch and tell it about my day, about the weather, about my memories of Robert and our life together on this farm. I would tell it about my children and grandchildren, about the world beyond this little valley that had become my entire universe. The creature would listen, or at least it seemed to listen, those big eyes fixed on me as I rambled on about nothing in particular. I learned that the creature was protective of the farm, not just staying away from my animals anymore, but actively guarding them from other predators. One evening, I was watching from my window when a pack of coyotes came sniffing around my chicken coop. They were circling the structure, looking for a way in, and I was about to go out with my rifle to scare them off. But before I could even get to the door, I heard a roar from the forest that made my blood run cold. It was a sound of pure power and fury, a warning that was unmistakable in its meaning. The creature came charging out of the trees, running faster than I had ever seen it move, all 8 feet of muscle and rage, bearing down on those coyotes like a freight train. The coyotes ran. They turned tail and fled so fast that they were just blurs of gray fur disappearing into the darkness. The creature chased them all the way to the edge of my property, roaring the entire time, and then stopped at the boundary line and let out one final bellow that echoed off the hills and faded into the night. Then, as if nothing had happened, it turned and walked calmly back toward the forest. It paused at the tree line and looked toward my chicken coop, checking to make sure everything was secure, and then it disappeared into the shadows. After that, the other predators stopped coming around. The coyotes, the wolves, even the occasional bear, they all seemed to understand that this territory was claimed by something bigger and more dangerous than they were. My remaining animals stopped being afraid of the creature. They had grown used to its presence over the months and years, and they understood on some instinctual level that it was not a threat to them anymore. The chickens do not even look up when the creature walks past their coop now. They just keep pecking at the ground, completely unbothered by the massive shape moving through the darkness. The goats sometimes follow it along the fence line when it passes by, curious and unafraid, as if it was just another farm animal going about its business. 3 years have passed since that first terrifying night when I lost my chickens and found those impossible footprints in the mud. 3 years of fear turning to understanding, of understanding turning to something that might even be called friendship. I am 82 years old now, and I feel every one of those years in my bones when I wake up each morning. My joints ache. My back does not want to straighten. My hands shake when I try to do the simplest tasks. I know that I do not have many years left on this earth, and that knowledge weighs on me more heavily than I like to admit. What happens to this arrangement when I am gone? Who will feed the creature when I am no longer here to put together those baskets? Who will leave out the apples and the bread and the honey that it has come to expect? I worry about this more than I probably should. The creature has survived in these woods for what might be decades or even centuries. It was here before I was born, and it will probably be here long after I am gone. It does not need me to survive. It knows how to hunt, how to forage, how to take care of itself. But I cannot help feeling like we have built something together, some kind of bond that goes beyond simple survival. I have given it food and safety and a kind of companionship, and in return it has given me purpose and wonder and a reason to keep getting out of bed each morning when I was not sure I wanted to anymore. I have thought about telling someone. I have thought about trying to get the creature some kind of protection, about documenting its existence in a way that might ensure its survival after I am gone. But who would believe me? And even if they did, what would they do? turn my property into some kind of research station, trap the creature and put it in a zoo or a laboratory. Let scientists poke and prod it, trying to understand something that maybe is not meant to be understood. I cannot let that happen. This creature has shown me kindness, or at least the creature's version of kindness. It has protected my farm and my animals. It has kept me company in my loneliness. The least I can do is protect its secret in return. So I keep our arrangement private. I do not tell my children or my grandchildren or the few friends I have left in the world. I do not post about it on the internet or call up any of those television shows that investigate unexplained phenomena. I just keep living my life, keep tending to my animals, keep putting out those baskets every few nights, and watching from my window as a creature out of legend comes to collect its meal. The creature came by last night, same as it has been doing for 3 years now. I had put together a particularly good basket filled with the last apples of the season, some dried venison that I had been preparing for weeks, fresh bread I had baked that morning, 2 jars of the local honey that the creature loves, and some of the wild berries that I had gathered from the edge of the forest. The creature sat at the edge of my yard and ate slowly, savoring each item, taking its time like it was enjoying a feast rather than just filling its stomach. When it was done, it looked toward my house. I was standing at my kitchen window, watching like I always do, my old face reflected in the glass. The creature raised one massive hand, fingers slightly spread, and held it there for a moment. It was waving at me, I am sure of it. A simple gesture of acknowledgement, of connection, of something that might even be called affection. I raised my own hand and waved back, my palm pressed against the cold glass of the window. We stayed like that for a long moment, woman and creature, separated by 50 feet of yard and 1,000,000 years of evolution, connected by something that I still do not fully understand. Then the creature picked up the empty basket, set it neatly in the spot where I always collected in the morning, and walked back into the forest. Its massive shape melted into the shadows between the trees, and within seconds it was gone, leaving nothing behind except the empty basket and my own racing heart. That is my life now. A lonely old woman and a lonely creature that the world does not believe in, taking care of each other in the middle of nowhere. It is not the life I imagined when I was young, when Robert and I bought this land and dreamed of filling it with children and grandchildren and all the noise and chaos of a big family. But it is the life I have now, and I would not trade it for anything in the world. Some people go their whole lives without experiencing real magic, real wonder, real proof that the world is bigger and stranger and more mysterious than we could ever imagine. I get to experience it every few nights, when a creature out of legend emerges from my forest and comes to share a meal with me. I do not know what the creature thinks of me. I do not know if it sees me as a friend or just a convenient source of food, a strange arrangement that it tolerates because the benefits outweigh the costs. But I like to think we have something more than that. I like to think that in our own strange way, we have saved each other. I gave it food and safety and a kind of companionship that it did not expect. It gave me purpose and wonder and a reason to keep living when I was ready to give up. That is more than a lot of people ever get. Tonight, I will put together another basket. I will add extra apples because the creature really seems to love those, especially the ones from the old tree that Robert planted 40 years ago. I will include some of the venison jerky that I finished drying yesterday, strips of meat that I hung in my shed for days until they were perfect. Maybe I will throw in another jar of honey and some of the fresh vegetables from my garden. And then I will set it out at the edge of my yard, where I always do, and I will wait. Maybe I will see the creature tonight. Maybe I will not. Maybe it will wave again from the tree line, that simple gesture that means more to me than I can possibly explain. Maybe it will just take the basket and disappear like a shadow, off to do whatever it does during the long hours when I am sleeping. But I will know It is out there, living in those woods, surviving another day, and it will know I am here, in this old farmhouse, keeping my end of our silent bargain. And for both of us, that is enough. If you ever find yourself living alone in the middle of nowhere and strange things start happening on your property, do not assume the worst. Do not assume you are being attacked or threatened, that you need to fight back with everything you have. Sometimes the strange things, the scary things, are just looking for a little bit of help, a little bit of understanding, a little bit of kindness. All it took for me was one basket of food, left out in good faith with an open heart, to turn a terrifying situation into something beautiful and strange and wonderful. I look out my kitchen window now, watching the sun set behind the hills like I have done thousands of times before. The shadows are getting long across my fields, stretching toward the forest like fingers reaching for something they can never quite grasp. Soon it will be dark. Soon I will hear those familiar footsteps coming from the north woods, heavy and deliberate. Soon I will watch as a massive fur-covered shape emerges from the trees and comes to collect the basket I left out this afternoon. And I will feel grateful, like I do every single time, that I get to be part of this incredible secret. The creature is real. It lives in the woods on my property. It visits my farm every few nights, and in its own strange way, it is my friend. That is my story, and I am sticking to it. Nobody has to believe me. I know the truth, and so does the creature. That is all that matters. The stars are coming out now, one by one. The same stars that have watched over this land for millions of years. Somewhere out there in the darkness, the creature is waking up, stretching its massive limbs, preparing for another night of doing whatever it is that creatures like it do when the rest of the world is sleeping. Maybe it is thinking about the basket I left out. Maybe it is thinking about me, or maybe it does not think about me at all. Maybe I am just a small part of its vast and ancient existence, a brief moment of convenience in a life that stretches back further than I can possibly imagine. Either way, I will be here. I will be on my porch or at my window, watching, waiting, feeling the cold night air on my face and the wonder in my heart. And when the creature finally emerges from the forest, when that massive shape moves through the shadows toward my little farm, I will raise my hand in greeting, because that is what friends do. I think about Robert sometimes, wonder what he would think of all this. He was always the practical one, the skeptic who believed only in things he could see and touch and measure. He would have laughed at me if I had told him about the creature, would have suggested that I was losing my mind in my old age. But Robert also had a way of coming around, of admitting when he was wrong and embracing new ideas once the evidence became undeniable. I like to think he would have believed me eventually. I like to think he would have sat on this porch with me, watching the creature eat, marveling at the impossibility of what we were witnessing. But Robert is gone, and I am here, and the creature is out there in the forest, and that is just the way things are. We do not get to choose the cards we are dealt in life. We only get to choose how we play them. And I have chosen to play mine with kindness and wonder, to embrace the mystery instead of fighting against it, to find joy in the impossible and comfort in the unknown. The wind is picking up now, rustling the leaves of the old apple trees, carrying the first hints of winter on its breath. Another season is changing, another year is passing, another chapter of my long life is coming to a close. But there will be more chapters after this one, I hope. More nights of watching the creature, more baskets of food left out in silent offering, more moments of connection across the vast divide that separates our two worlds. I am 82 years old, and I have seen things that most people will never see, known things that most people will never know. I have loved and lost and loved again, have built a life on this land that I will carry with me into whatever comes next. And in these final years, I've been given a gift that I never expected, a glimpse into a world that most people dismiss as fantasy. A reminder that there is still magic left in this tired old earth if you just know where to look for it. The creature is my reminder. Every time I see it, every time it waves at me across the darkness, I am reminded that the world is full of wonders that we have not yet discovered, full of creatures that we have not yet named, full of mysteries that we may never solve. And that thought fills me with something that I can only describe as hope. Hope that there is more to existence than what we can see and measure and understand. Hope that there are still secrets out there, waiting for someone curious enough and open-minded enough and brave enough to find them. I found mine, a creature out of legend, living in the woods on my property, visiting my farm every few nights to share a meal with a lonely old woman. It is not the secret I expected. It is not the wonder I was looking for, but it is mine, and I am grateful for it, and I will protect it for as long as I have breath in my body. The sun is almost gone now, just a sliver of orange light on the horizon. The first stars are appearing in the east, faint pinpricks of light that will grow brighter as the darkness deepens. Somewhere in the forest, the creature is stirring. I can feel it somehow, a presence at the edge of my awareness, an ancient and powerful thing waking up to greet the night. I put on my coat and step out onto the porch, letting the cold air wash over my face. The basket is sitting where I left it, at the edge of my yard, filled with food and hope and the silent promise that I will be here tomorrow night and the night after that and every night until there are no more nights left. I sit down in my old rocking chair, the one that Robert made for me so many years ago that I cannot remember exactly when anymore. The wood creaks beneath me, familiar and comforting. I wrap a blanket around my shoulders and settle in to wait. And soon, from the direction of the north woods, I hear them. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, moving through the underbrush with a certainty that only comes from years of walking the same paths. The creature is coming, just like it always does. Just like it always will. I smile into the darkness and wait for my friend to arrive. The footsteps grow louder as the creature approaches, each one sending a small tremor through the ground that I can feel even from my seat on the porch. It is a feeling I have come to love, that subtle vibration that tells me the creature is near, that our nightly ritual is about to begin. I lean forward in my chair, peering into the shadows at the edge of my property, waiting for that first glimpse of dark fur and massive form. And there it is. Emerging from the tree line, like a shadow separating itself from the darkness, the creature steps into the open space of my yard. It moves with the same deliberate grace that I have observed so many times before, each step careful and purposeful, as if it is always aware of its own size and strength and the impact it has on the world around it. In the fading light, I can see its face more clearly than usual, can see the way its eyes reflect the last rays of the setting sun, can see something that might be anticipation in the set of its features. It pauses at the edge of my yard, about 20 feet from the basket, and looks toward my porch. Our eyes meet across the distance, and for a moment, neither of us moves. This is part of our ritual too, this moment of acknowledgement before the feeding begins. It is the creature's way of showing respect, I think, of making sure I know that it sees me, that it knows I am watching, that this arrangement is a two-way thing rather than just a mindless pattern of behavior. I nod my head slightly, a gesture that the creature seems to understand. Its mouth moves in what might be a smile, or might just be a twitch of muscles, or might be my imagination filling in meaning where there is none. Then it turns its attention to the basket and begins to walk toward it. Watching the creature eat is one of the great pleasures of my old age. It takes such obvious enjoyment in the food I provide, handles each item with such care and attention that I cannot help feeling like I'm doing something worthwhile, something that matters. Tonight it starts with the apples, picking each one up and examining it before biting into it, chewing slowly and thoroughly, making sounds of appreciation that are almost human in their expressiveness. Then it moves on to the bread, tearing off pieces and placing them in its mouth one at a time, taking its time, savoring every bite. The venison jerky is next, and I watch as the creature's face changes when it tastes the dried meat. It is one of its favorites, I know, something that takes me days to prepare, but that the creature can consume in minutes. It eats the jerky quickly, as if it cannot help itself, as if the taste is too good to stretch out over time. And then it moves on to the honey, lifting the jar to its lips and tipping it back, letting the thick, golden liquid pour into its mouth in a stream that seems to go on forever. When the basket is empty, the creature sets it down carefully in the spot where I always collect it in the morning. Then it stands up straight and looks at my porch again. I am still sitting in my rocking chair, wrapped in my blanket, watching everything with the same wonder that I felt the very first time. The creature raises its hand, palm out, fingers slightly spread, held steady for a long moment. A wave, a greeting, a gesture of connection across the distance between us. I raise my own hand in response, feeling the cold air on my bare skin, feeling the warmth of emotion in my chest. We stay like that for several heartbeats, woman and creature, friend and friend, holding our hands up in a mirror image of each other. Then the creature lowers its hand, turns, and walks back toward the forest. Its massive form moves through the darkness with surprising grace, and within moments it has melted back into the shadows, leaving nothing behind except the empty basket and the memory of its presence. I sit on my porch for a while longer, watching the stars come out, feeling the cold seep into my bones. But I do not mind the cold tonight. I do not mind anything tonight. I have seen my friend, have shared another meal with it, have experienced another moment of impossible connection. And that is enough to keep me warm for hours. When I finally go back inside, I make myself a cup of tea and sit at my kitchen table, thinking about everything that has happened over the past 3 years. The fear at the beginning, the loss, the confusion, the moment when I first understood what I was dealing with, and the moment when I decided to try kindness instead of violence. The slow building of trust, the gradual transformation from terror to wonder, the development of something that I still do not have words for. I think about my husband Robert, and I wonder again what he would think of all this. He was a practical man, a man who believed in science and reason and the explainable workings of the natural world. But he was also a man who loved me, who trusted my judgment, who would have believed me if I had told him what I was experiencing. I wish he was here to see it. I wish he could sit on the porch with me and watch the creature come and go, could feel the same wonder that I feel every time I see that massive shape emerging from the trees. But Robert is gone, and I am here, and the creature is out there somewhere in the forest, doing whatever it does when it is not visiting my farm. And that is just the way things are. I finish my tea and wash the cup, placing it carefully in the dish rack to dry. The house is quiet around me, the old floorboards creaking softly as I move through the familiar rooms. I check the locks on all the doors and windows, not because I am afraid anymore, but out of habit, the ingrained caution of a woman who has lived alone for 16 years in the middle of nowhere. When I get to my bedroom, I pause at the window and look out at the dark landscape beyond. The moon is rising over the eastern hills, casting a silvery light across my fields and the edge of the forest. Somewhere out there, the creature is moving through the trees, full and content from its meal, going about its mysterious business. I raise my hand to the glass, pressing my palm against the cold surface. A gesture that no one can see, a goodbye that no one can hear, but I feel better for making it, feel connected to something larger than myself, something that transcends the normal boundaries of human existence. I am 82 years old, and I have a friend that the world does not believe in. I have a secret that I will carry with me to my grave, and I have a purpose that gives meaning to these final years of my life. That is more than a lot of people can say. I let the curtain fall back across the window and turn toward my bed. Tomorrow there will be more work to do, more animals to tend to, more baskets to prepare. But for now, there is rest. For now, there is the peaceful exhaustion of a life well lived and a day well spent. I climb under the covers and close my eyes, and I fall asleep with a smile on my face, dreaming of dark forests and ancient creatures and the strange, wonderful bonds that can form between beings who have nothing in common except the land they share and the loneliness they understand. When I wake in the morning, the basket will be sitting on my porch steps, empty and clean, waiting for me to fill it again. And I will fill it. Tonight and tomorrow night and every night after that, for as long as I am able. Because that is what friends do. The morning comes slowly, the way mornings always come when you are old and the night was long. I lie in my bed for a while, listening to the sounds of the farm waking up around me. The chickens are clucking in their coop, ready to be let out for the day. The goats are bleating, reminding me that breakfast time is approaching. The ducks are quacking down by the pond, carrying on their endless conversations with each other about whatever it is that ducks discuss. I swing my legs over the side of the bed and wince as my feet touch the cold floor. The arthritis in my knees complains as I stand up, and my back protests as I try to straighten it. But I have learned to ignore these complaints, to push through the pain and get on with the business of living. There is too much to do on a farm to lie around feeling sorry for yourself. I dress quickly in my usual work clothes, heavy pants and a flannel shirt and thick wool socks, then head to the kitchen to make my morning coffee. The ritual is comforting, the same sequence of actions I have performed every morning for decades. Fill the pot with water, measure out the grounds, set it on the stove to percolate, wait. While the coffee is brewing, I look out the window at my yard. The basket is sitting on the porch steps, just as I knew it would be, empty and clean, ready for the next offering. I smile at the sight of it, feeling that familiar warmth spread through my chest. Another successful exchange, another peaceful night. I pour my coffee and take it out onto the porch, where I sit in my rocking chair and watch the sun come up over the eastern hills. The air is cold but crisp, full of the clean smell of autumn and the promise of the day ahead. I drink my coffee slowly, savoring each sip, thinking about what I will put in the basket tonight. The apples are almost finished for the season, just a few left on the old tree behind the barn. I should pick those today, save the best ones for the creature, and use the rest for pies or sauce. I have some more venison in the freezer, enough to make another batch of jerky if I start it this morning. And there is still plenty of honey, thanks to a good season from the local beekeepers. I finish my coffee and set the empty cup aside, then stand up and stretch, feeling my joints pop and crackle with the movement. Time to start the day. Time to feed the animals and check the fences and do all the 100 little tasks that keep this farm running. But first, I walk over to the porch steps and pick up the basket. I examine it carefully, looking for any sign of damage or wear. The creature has always been gentle with the basket, setting it down carefully when it is done, never throwing it or dropping it or handling it roughly. This basket is the same one I have been using for almost 3 years now, and it still looks nearly new, just a little faded from the sun and the weather. I carry the basket inside and set it on the kitchen counter. Tonight I will fill it again. Tonight I will add the apples and the jerky and the honey, maybe some bread if I have time to bake it this afternoon. And tonight, the creature will come again, will eat the food I provide, will wave at me across the darkness before disappearing back into the forest. This is my life now. This is my purpose, and I would not have it any other way. The rest of the morning passes quickly, the way mornings always pass when you are busy. I let the chickens out and collect their eggs. I feed the goats and check on the ducks. I walk the fence line, looking for any places that need repair, making mental notes of the work that needs to be done. The sun climbs higher in the sky, warming the air and chasing away the morning chill. Around midday, I take a break and make myself some lunch, a simple sandwich and a glass of water. I eat it on the porch, watching the clouds drift across the sky, thinking about nothing in particular. This is one of the gifts of old age, I have found, the ability to just sit and be, to exist in the moment without worrying about the future or dwelling on the past. After lunch, I start working on the venison jerky. I take the meat from the freezer and slice it into thin strips, then prepare the marinade, a mixture of salt and pepper and garlic and a few secret ingredients that I've been using for decades. I lay the strips in a shallow pan and pour the marinade over them, then cover the pan and put it in the refrigerator to sit overnight. Tomorrow, I will hang the strips in my shed to dry, and in a few days they will be ready. The afternoon passes even more quickly than the morning. I pick the last of the apples from the old tree, filling a basket with the best of them, the ones with the deepest color and the sweetest smell. I check on the animals again, making sure everyone is healthy and happy. I do some minor repairs on the chicken coop, replacing a few boards that were starting to rot. By the time the sun starts to set, I am tired but satisfied. It has been a good day, a productive day, a day that has reminded me why I love this life so much. I wash up and change into clean clothes, then start preparing tonight's basket. The apples go in first, the big red ones from the old tree that the creature loves so much. Then the bread, a loaf I baked this morning and have been keeping warm in the oven. Then a jar of honey, thick and golden and smelling of wildflowers. I do not have any fresh jerky yet, but I add some dried fruit instead, raisins and apricots that I bought at the market last week. When the basket is full, I carry it outside and set it at the edge of my yard, in the same spot where I always leave it. Then I go back to my porch and sit in my rocking chair, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders against the evening chill, and I wait. The sun sinks below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The stars begin to appear, faint at first, then brighter as the darkness deepens. The air grows cold, but I do not mind. I am used to the cold. I have lived with it for 82 years. An hour passes, then another. The moon rises over the eastern hills, casting its silver light across my fields. The night sounds grow louder, the chirping of crickets and the hooting of owls and the rustling of small animals in the underbrush. But I do not hear the sound I am waiting for. I do not hear those heavy footsteps coming from the north woods. I wait a while longer, then finally stand up and go inside. The creature does not come every night. Sometimes it goes days without appearing, for reasons that I do not understand and cannot predict. Maybe it is not hungry tonight. Maybe it is busy with other things. Maybe it is somewhere else entirely, doing whatever creatures like it do when they are not visiting lonely old farms in the middle of nowhere. I am not worried. The creature will come when it is ready, and I will be here, waiting. I make myself a cup of tea and sit at the kitchen table, looking out the window at the dark landscape beyond. The basket is still sitting at the edge of my yard, untouched, waiting for its recipient. Tomorrow, if the creature does not come tonight, I will bring the basket back inside and keep the food for the next attempt. But as I'm sitting there, sipping my tea and thinking about going to bed, I hear something, a sound from outside, faint but distinctive. Not footsteps, but something else. A kind of rustling, followed by a soft thump. I get up from the table and walk to the window, peering out into the darkness. At first, I cannot see anything unusual. Just my yard, bathed in moonlight and the edge of the forest beyond. But then I notice something moving at the tree line. Something dark and massive and familiar. The creature is there. It is standing just inside the trees, barely visible in the shadows, watching my house. It has not come forward to take the basket. It is just standing there, watching. I open the door and step out onto the porch. The cold air hits my face immediately, but I barely notice it. I am too focused on the creature, too curious about why it is behaving differently tonight. I stand on my porch and look at the creature, and the creature looks back at me. We hold each other's gaze across the distance, across the darkness, across the vast gulf that separates our two worlds. And then the creature does something I have never seen it do before. It raises both hands and makes a gesture, not a wave this time, but something else. It presses its hands together, palm to palm, and bows its head slightly. Then it looks up at me again and repeats the gesture, holding it for a long moment before lowering its hands. I do not know what the gesture means. I do not know if it is a greeting or a farewell or something else entirely. But I feel the weight of it, the significance. The creature is trying to communicate something, trying to tell me something that words could never express. I raise my own hands and mirror the gesture, pressing my palms together and bowing my head. It feels right somehow, even though I do not understand it. It feels like an acknowledgement, a recognition of the bond between us. The creature watches me make the gesture, and then it nods, a slow, deliberate movement of its massive head. Then it turns and walks back into the forest, disappearing into the shadows as silently as it came. I stand on my porch for a long time, thinking about what just happened. The basket is still sitting at the edge of my yard, still untouched. The creature did not come to eat tonight. It came for something else, something that I may never fully understand. But I understand enough. I understand that the bond between us is real, that it goes beyond simple food and simple hunger. I understand that the creature sees me as more than just a convenient source of nutrition. And I understand that whatever we have, whatever this strange relationship is, it matters to both of us. I pick up the basket and bring it inside, then cover it with a cloth and set it aside for tomorrow. The food will keep. And tomorrow night, or the night after that, the creature will come again, and we will continue this strange dance that we have been doing for 3 years. I go to bed feeling peaceful and content. I do not know what the future holds, but I know that I am not alone. And for an 82-year-old woman living by herself in the middle of nowhere, that knowledge is worth more than gold. The weeks pass, as weeks always do, each one bringing its own challenges and its own rewards. The weather grows colder, the days grow shorter, and the first snows begin to fall on the hills around my property. I prepare for winter the way I always have, stocking up on supplies, reinforcing the animal pens, making sure that everything is ready for the long months of cold and darkness ahead. The creature continues to visit, though less frequently now that winter is approaching. Sometimes a week will pass without any sign of it, and I will start to worry, wondering if something has happened, if it has moved on to other territory, or gotten sick or fallen victim to some danger I cannot imagine. But then it will appear again at the edge of my property, massive and dark and unmistakable, and my worries will fade away. I notice changes in the creature as the weeks pass, subtle things that I might have missed if I was not paying such close attention. Its fur seems thicker now, presumably growing in preparation for the winter cold. Its movements are slower and more deliberate, as if it is conserving energy for the lean months ahead. It eats more when it visits, taking every scrap of food I leave out, and sometimes looking toward my house as if asking for more. I start leaving larger baskets, filled with higher calorie foods that will help the creature put on weight for the winter. More meat, more honey, more bread. I even start adding some of the dried corn that I keep for my chickens, noticing that the creature seems to enjoy the crunchiness and the slightly sweet taste. Each basket is a gift, an offering, a way of saying that I am thinking about the creature even when it is not here, that I am trying to take care of it the way it has taken care of my farm. One night in early December, the creature brings me a gift in return. I am sitting on my porch as usual, watching the darkness, when I see it emerge from the forest, carrying something in its arms. At first I cannot tell what it is, just a dark shape pressed against the creature's chest. But as it gets closer, I can make out more details. It is a deer, a small doe, freshly killed, still warm. The creature carries it across my yard and sets it down at the edge of my porch, then takes a step back and looks at me. I stare at the deer for a long moment, not sure what to say or do. Then I look up at the creature, meeting its eyes in the moonlight. It makes that pressing hands gesture again, the one that seems to mean thank you or respect or something along those lines. And I understand. The creature is thanking me. It is showing its appreciation for all the food I have given it, all the care I have shown, all the kindness I have offered over the past 3 years. This deer is a gift, a repayment of sorts, the creature's way of contributing to our arrangement. I stand up and bow my head, pressing my own hands together in return. Then I walk down the steps and approach the deer, kneeling beside it to examine the kill. It is clean, expertly done, the animal dying quickly without suffering. The creature knew what it was doing. It knows how to hunt, how to kill humanely, how to provide. I look up at the creature and smile, hoping that it can understand the gratitude in my expression. Then I say out loud, "Thank you." I do not know if the creature can understand my words, but I feel the need to speak them anyway. The creature tilts its head slightly, listening to my voice. Then it nods slowly and deliberately and turns to walk back toward the forest. At the tree line, it pauses and looks back at me one more time. I raise my hand in a wave, and it raises its own hand in response. Then it is gone, melting into the shadows, leaving me alone with my gift. I spend the next several hours butchering the deer, working by the light of my porch lamp and a few lanterns I set up around the yard. It is hard work, especially for an old woman with arthritic hands, but I manage. By the time I am finished, I have enough venison to last me through several months of winter. I set aside the best parts, the tenderest cuts, and put them in my freezer. The rest I begin preparing for drying, slicing it into strips and laying it out the way I have done hundreds of times before. This meat will become jerky, and some of that jerky will go back into the baskets I leave for the creature. A circle of giving, each of us taking care of the other. As I work, I think about the creature and everything it has given me over the past 3 years. Not just this deer, but so much more. It has given me protection for my farm, driving away the predators that used to threaten my animals. It has given me company in my loneliness, a presence that I can watch and interact with, something to look forward to in the long, empty nights. It has given me purpose, a reason to keep going when I was not sure I wanted to anymore. And now it has given me this gift, this tangible expression of gratitude and connection. A deer, killed and delivered to my doorstep, offered with that strange hand-pressing gesture that seems to mean so much. I finish my work as the sun begins to rise, washing the blood from my hands and surveying the results of my labor. The yard is clean, the meat is stored, and I'm exhausted but happy. I have just shared something with the creature, something that goes beyond the simple exchange of food for peace. We have become something more to each other, something that I still do not have words for. I go inside and make myself a cup of coffee, then sit at my kitchen table and watch the sun come up. The world outside my window is quiet and peaceful, coated in a thin layer of frost that glitters in the early morning light. Another day is beginning. Another opportunity to live this strange and wonderful life I have found myself in. I think about Robert again, wonder what he would think of all this. He would be proud of me, I decide, proud that I have survived all these years on my own, proud that I have found a way to make peace with the impossible, proud that I am still here, still fighting, still finding reasons to get up every morning. I miss him. I will always miss him. But I am not alone, not really. I have my animals and my land and my strange, wonderful friend in the forest. And that is enough. That is more than enough. The winter deepens, bringing with it the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and refuses to leave. The snow piles up around my property, turning the landscape into a white wonderland that would be beautiful if it was not so deadly. I check on my animals multiple times a day, making sure they have enough food and water, making sure they are protected from the worst of the cold. The chickens stay in their coop, huddled together for warmth. The goats crowd into their shelter, bleating their displeasure at the weather. Even the ducks have retreated from the frozen pond to the relative warmth of their little house. The creature visits less frequently during the deepest part of winter, and I understand why. The snow makes travel difficult even for something as large and powerful as it is. The cold saps energy and demands constant feeding. Survival becomes the primary focus, pushing everything else aside. But it still comes. At least once a week, sometimes more, I see that massive shape emerge from the snow-covered forest and make its way toward my farm. It moves more slowly now, struggling through the drifts, its dark fur standing out starkly against the white landscape. But it always makes it, always reaches the basket I have left out, always eats and waves and disappears back into the forest. I worry about it during the times when it does not come. I lie awake at night, listening to the wind howl outside my window, wondering if the creature is warm enough, if it has found shelter, if it is getting enough to eat. I start leaving out extra food, not just in the basket but also at several points along the tree line, hoping that the creature will find these caches and benefit from them. One night in late January, during the worst storm of the season, the creature comes to my farm and does not leave. I am sitting at my kitchen window, watching the snow blow sideways in the wind, when I see a shape moving through the blizzard. At first, I think it is just a trick of the snow, a random pattern that my tired eyes are interpreting as something meaningful. But as I watch, the shape grows larger and more distinct, and I realize that the creature is there, struggling through the storm toward my property. I grab my coat and boots and run outside, not caring about the cold or the wind or the danger. The creature is moving slowly, almost stumbling, and when it reaches my yard, it collapses into the snow and does not get up. I rush to its side, my heart pounding with fear. In the dim light of my porch lamp, I can see that something is wrong. The creature's breathing is labored, its massive chest heaving with each breath. Its fur is matted with snow and ice, and there is a wound on its side, a deep gash that is leaking dark blood onto the white ground. I do not know what happened. I do not know what could injure something as powerful as this creature, but I know that it needs help, and I am the only one who can provide it. I run back to the house and gather supplies, blankets, towels, antiseptic, bandages. I fill a bucket with warm water and grab the first aid kit from the bathroom. Then I go back out into the storm and kneel beside the creature in the snow. It is awake, watching me with those intelligent eyes. It makes a sound, a low rumble that might be pain or might be fear or might be something else entirely. I place my hand on its arm, feeling the thick fur beneath my fingers, and I try to communicate with my eyes what I cannot say with words. I am here. I am going to help you. Trust me. The next few hours are a blur of activity. I clean the wound as best I can, flushing it with water and antiseptic, picking out the debris that has gotten lodged in the gash. The creature lies still while I work, only flinching occasionally when I touch a particularly sensitive spot. I cannot tell how deep the wound goes, cannot tell if it has damaged anything vital. All I can do is clean it and bandage it and hope for the best. When the wound is covered, I drape blankets over the creature's massive form, trying to keep it warm against the cold. The snow continues to fall around us, covering my efforts almost as soon as I complete them. I know that I cannot leave the creature out here, cannot let it freeze to death in my yard, but I also know that there is no way I can move it. It must weigh at least 500 pounds, maybe more. So I do the only thing I can think of. I stay with it. I sit down in the snow beside the creature, wrapped in my own blankets, and I wait out the storm. The night is long and cold and terrifying. The wind howls around us, driving snow into every crevice, dropping the temperature to dangerous levels. I huddle against the creature's side, sharing what little warmth my old body can produce, talking to it constantly in a low, soothing voice. I tell it about my life, about Robert, about my children and grandchildren. I tell it about the farm and the animals and all the years I have spent on this land. I tell it that it is going to be okay, that it is going to survive, that I will not let it die. I do not know if the creature understands me. I do not know if it can hear me over the roar of the wind. But I keep talking anyway, because the sound of my own voice is the only thing keeping me sane in that frozen nightmare. Around dawn, the storm finally begins to subside. The wind dies down, the snow stops falling, and a pale grey light starts to spread across the sky. I am frozen and exhausted, my whole body aching with cold, but I am alive. And when I look at the creature beside me, I see that it is alive too. Its breathing is steadier now, less labored. Its eyes are open, watching me with an expression that I cannot read. I place my hand on its arm again, feeling the warmth that is still there beneath the fur, and I smile. We made it. We survived the night. The creature stays in my yard for 3 more days, recovering from its injury. I bring it food and water and fresh bandages, checking the wound regularly to make sure it is healing properly. By the 2nd day, it is able to sit up on its own. By the 3rd day, it is standing, still weak, but clearly on the mend. On the morning of the 4th day, the creature leaves. It walks slowly toward the forest, pausing at the tree line to look back at me. It raises its hand in that familiar wave, and I raise mine in response. Then it disappears into the trees, and I am alone again. But I am not sad. I am proud. I helped the creature when it needed help. I stayed with it through the worst night of my life. I proved that our bond is real, that it goes both ways, that we are truly in this together, and I know that the creature will be back. It will heal, it will recover, and it will return to my farm, same as it always has. And I will be here, waiting with a basket full of food and a heart full of love. That is what friends do. Spring comes late that year, as if winter is reluctant to release its grip on the land. But eventually, the snow begins to melt, and the first green shoots start to push up through the frozen ground. The air grows warmer, the days grow longer, and my farm begins to come back to life. The creature returns in early April, looking healthy and strong, and fully recovered from its injury. I see it at the edge of my property one evening, just standing there, watching my house. When I wave, it waves back. Then it makes that hand-pressing gesture that I have come to associate with gratitude and respect. I press my own hands together and bow my head, returning the gesture. And then we both stand there for a long moment, woman and creature, connected by something that neither of us can explain. 3 years have passed since the creature first came to my farm. 3 years of fear and wonder and growth. 3 years of learning to trust something that should not exist, of building a relationship that defies everything I thought I knew about the world. I'm 82 years old now, and I know that I do not have much time left. My body is failing bit by bit, despite my best efforts to keep it going. My joints ache worse than ever. My eyes are not as sharp as they used to be. My heart, that faithful organ that has been beating in my chest for more than 8 decades, sometimes stutters and skips in ways that it never used to. But I'm not afraid. I have lived a good life, a full life, a life filled with love and loss and wonder. And in these final years, I have been given a gift that most people never receive. I've seen proof that the world is bigger and stranger than we imagine. I've made a friend that the world does not believe in. I have experienced magic. Whatever happens next, whatever comes after this life, I will carry that magic with me. I will remember the creature, remember our bond, remember all the nights we spent together in our strange, wordless communication. And maybe, if there is something after death, if there is some other plane of existence where consciousness continues in some form, I will find the creature there too. Or maybe not. Maybe this is all there is, this brief span of years that we call a life. Maybe when I close my eyes for the last time, there will be nothing else, just darkness and silence and the end of everything. Either way, I am ready. I have done what I came here to do. I have lived and loved and wondered and learned. I have been a good steward of this land that Robert and I claimed so many years ago. I have taken care of my animals and my property and my strange, wonderful friend in the forest. And tonight I will put together another basket. I will fill it with apples and bread and honey and all the other things that the creature loves. And I will set it at the edge of my yard and wait for my friend to come. Because that is what I do, that is who I am, that is the life I have chosen. And I would not have it any other way. The sun is setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. The shadows are lengthening across my fields, reaching toward the forest like fingers stretching for something they can never quite grasp. The air is cool, but not cold, carrying the scent of spring flowers and new growth and all the promise of the season ahead. I stand up from my porch chair and stretch, feeling my old joints creak and pop. Then I pick up the basket I prepared earlier and carry it down the steps, setting it in its usual spot at the edge of my yard. The apples are from the first picking of the new season. The bread is still warm from the oven, and the honey is thick and golden and smelling of wildflowers. I go back to my porch and sit down, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. And I wait. The stars come out one by one, the same stars that have watched over this land for millions of years. The moon rises over the eastern hills, casting its silver light across my fields. The night sounds grow louder, the symphony of frogs and crickets and owls that has been the soundtrack of my life for more than half a century. And then I hear them, footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming from the direction of the north woods. The creature is approaching, same as it always does, same as it always will. I lean forward in my chair, peering into the darkness, waiting for that first glimpse of dark fur and massive form. And there it is, emerging from the tree line, like a shadow coming to life. It moves with that same deliberate grace that I have come to know so well, each step careful and purposeful. It pauses at the edge of my yard, looking toward my porch. Our eyes meet across the distance, across the darkness, across everything that separates us. And I smile. "Hello, old friend," I say softly, knowing that it probably cannot understand my words, but wanting to speak them anyway. "I have been waiting for you." The creature tilts its head slightly, listening. Then it nods, slowly and deliberately, and walks toward the basket. I watch as it eats, savoring the sight, memorizing every detail, the way it handles each item with such care, the sounds it makes as it enjoys the food, the way it glances toward my porch occasionally, checking to make sure I'm still there. When the basket is empty, the creature sets it down in its usual spot and stands up. It looks at me for a long moment, those intelligent eyes reflecting the moonlight, and then it raises its hand, not just in a wave this time, but in that hand-pressing gesture that means so much. It holds the gesture for a long moment, its massive hands pressed together, its head bowed slightly. I stand up from my chair and mirror the gesture, pressing my own hands together and bowing my head. We hold the position together, woman and creature, connected by something that words could never express. Then the creature lowers its hands and turns toward the forest. It walks slowly, not rushing, as if it wants to savor these last moments as much as I do. At the tree line it pauses and looks back one more time. I raise my hand in a final wave. The creature raises its own hand in response. Then it is gone, melting into the shadows, returning to whatever mysterious existence it leads in the deep forest. I stand on my porch for a long time, looking at the empty space where the creature had been. The night is quiet now, peaceful, filled with the soft sounds of the natural world going about its business. And I am happy, truly, deeply, profoundly happy. I have lived a good life. I have loved and been loved. I have experienced wonders that most people can only dream of. And I have a friend, a strange, impossible, wonderful friend that the world does not believe in. That is enough. That is more than enough. I pick up the empty basket and carry it inside, already thinking about what I will put in it tomorrow. More apples, definitely. The creature loves apples. Maybe some of that new honey I bought at the market last week. Maybe a piece of the pie I am planning to bake in the morning. Whatever I choose, it will be given with love. And whatever happens next, I will face it with the same courage and wonder that has carried me through these past 3 years. Because that is what this life has taught me. That is the lesson I will carry with me into whatever comes next. The world is full of mysteries, full of wonders, full of creatures that we do not understand and connections that we cannot explain. And the only proper response to all of that is gratitude. Gratitude and love. I close the door behind me and turn off the porch light. The darkness settles over my little farm, soft and peaceful and full of promise. Tomorrow is another day, another opportunity, another chance to live this strange and wonderful life. And I cannot wait to see what it brings.